Hello everybody, MadXStitcher here with a tutorial today that I think some of you will enjoy because some of you have been asking me to do this. So today we're going to be talking about hand-stitched patches, particularly those that are stitched on Aida. Because the thing about patches is that you have to do the edge work, and sometimes that edge work can be very tricky without a machine. So I'm just going to show you how to go ahead and do that really quickly today. So the first thing you want to do is to stitch your design, and we're not going to really cover that too much because that's fairly straightforward. Now typically the patches are easiest to do with a square design, but once you get the hang of how to do the edges, you can do pretty much any geometric shape that you want. In the past I've done Minecraft diamonds and Mario power-up mushrooms and other things like that. But once we've got our design actually stitched, as we have right here, we'll go ahead and do the edging. Usually I like to do my edging in black, but today I will do it in yellow just so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Now to do the edging, what you're going to do is take the color that you'll be using and do a row of stitching all around the border of what you've already done. And at this point, coverage is what you really want. So I'm actually using 4 strands of yellow instead of 2 like I used for the actual design because I want as little of the fabric to be showing through as possible. The more coverage you get on there, the better it will look in the end. Once you're done with your border, you'll want to cut out the patch from your fabric now. And since this is a small patch, it's only 1 inch wide, I've cut out 5 stitches from the outside of the patch on all 4 edges, and I cut that with these very sharp little scissors of mine, and I'm very precise about it using the perforation in the Aida to guide my stitching. And that just makes it a little bit nicer on the back. It leaves me with less extra fabric to worry about, but still has enough to do the edging that I need to do. And unfortunately, there's really no hard or fast rule for how much to leave. It depends on the Aida count that you're using, the size of the patch. You'll kind of just have to experiment with this, but for a small patch like this that's only 1 inch wide, 5 stitches is pretty good. You probably, even for a large patch, won't want to go much above 10 stitches to give yourself a bit of lead room. But having that little bit of extra fabric on the back can make the patch itself sit a little bit more evenly once you've stitched it or glued it onto whatever it is you're going to be gluing it onto. Now once you have your patch cut out, what you'll want to do is just fold that edge fabric over to the back and give it a good crease so that it wants to stay. And for the corners, what I do is just kind of fold that in a second time so that you don't have any of the edges along the edge of the patch because they can kind of fray and get a little bit fuzzy, and you don't want that poking through when you're doing your final stitching or afterward just as the patch gets older. So if you angle that in, you're not going to get that fuzz showing out as much as you would otherwise. Now it's time to do the actual edging on the patch, and to do that we're going to use a very simple whip stitch. Depending on the fabric count that you're using, you'll want to use between 4 and 6 strands of floss. I'm using 18 count, so 4 strands does just fine. Now to do the edge stitching, we're going to use a loop start to make sure there are no knots or loose threads hanging off of the edges. And to do that, we're going to use that border stitch that we've already done as a guide for where to do the edge stitching. And what you're going to do is take your needle and put it in through the front, through the holes that are already in the Aida, and out from the back, passing your needle through the loop in the floss and pulling it tight. That's our first stitch. To do the second stitch, we're going to go in through the next hole over, again going in through the front and out through the back, and pull the floss tight. The third stitch is going to go through that same hole, again going in through the front and out through the back, and you're just going to loop the thread around the edge of the fabric again and again and again. The next stitch after that, you're going to go to the next hole over, again in through the front and out through the back. And then you're going to repeat through that hole again, and each hole along the edge of the fabric will have 2 stitches gone through it, and that will give you both a tight stitch around the edge of the patch to make sure that nothing comes loose, and it will also give you good solid coverage to make sure that you don't see any of the fabric peeking through. When you get to the corner, you're going to want to do a few more stitches than usual, and you're also going to want to make sure you get through that folded part along the back. And I do recommend using a thicker needle for this, like a tapestry needle. An embroidery needle might have an easier time finding the holes, but they will also bend and break a lot more easily because you're going through a lot of fabric, especially at the corners. But once you're at the corner, you're just going to want to do at least 2 stitches on either edge. And you might even want to try to do another stitch or 2 to make sure you completely get the corner. You might not always be able to get every single patch of fabric that's on the corner. You might have a little bit of fabric peeking through, but that is kind of one of the quirks of handmade items, is they're not always going to be machine perfect, and that is what kind of gives them their handmade charm. So don't worry if your corners aren't completely perfect, but getting as much of them covered as possible by doing extra stitches will get you what you want in the end. Once you've gone all the way around the patch, you'll want to put the needle through that very first stitch that we did, making sure there are now 2 stitches through that first hole. And after that, you can tie off your needle like usual, however you choose to do them, and your patch is ready to go. It's now done. It can be sewn or glued onto whatever you want it to put it on, or you can give it away or do whatever it is you wanted to do with the patch. But doing the edging hopefully isn't too hard or too complicated, and now you know how to do it as well. If you make a patch of your own, I'd love to see it. Send it to me on Tumblr or Twitter. I'm on both. You can find the links on my channel art. I hope this helped, and I will see you in the next one.